how often you get back home? So and for filing today, is this a common occurrence to be back in Arkansas?
No, it's not, because I'm spending most of my time in Iowa, New Hampshire. Last week I was in Georgia, and so I'm on the road. And so it's special to be able to come back today and to file for office for the ballot here in Arkansas for President of the United States. But my home's here, and I do get back once every 2 weeks or so and get a refreshment and head back out. So it's all about the campaign trail. You think about Iowa vote is January 15th, which is just right around the corner, and then it's going to come very fast.
What was the feeling like going in there this morning? They should go to work every day for 8 years for this specific task.
Well, it's something I wouldn't want to miss, and I was grateful for so many friends that were there as I filed. And this is the place that I filed for the United States Senate. I filed for governor twice, and now for President of the United States here in the home state. And even though the election is March 5th, Super Tuesday, where Arkansans will get to vote, you got to file early. And so I wasn't going to miss this. And Arkansans should know that they're going to have a meaningful role in the selection of the next president and the nominee of the party. Because in March, sometimes the race is over. I don't expect that to be the case this year. I think it'll be wide open, and so Arkansans' vote will be very important.
Some of the characterization of the race comes from what you've said on the campaign trail, including last week in Florida, where you're out there specifically saying that the way you look at it, there's a high likelihood that Donald Trump, the front runner right now, could be convicted, certainly indicted already, but could be already convicted by the time some meaningful votes are taking place. When you say that, and not everybody has heard your speech in Florida last week, when you say that, are you saying that as a former federal prosecutor who's actually tried cases and brought cases, or are you saying that as a savvy political observer who's looking at the way these cases are unfolding and the political enemies that appear to be lining up against him?
Well, I'm speaking as a former federal prosecutor and as someone who's been in the courtroom even as a defense attorney for decades. I know juries, I know cases, and there's a presumption of innocence. But when you have 4 different criminal charges, you've got weeks in the courtroom, it is difficult for America and for the voter. And I've looked at those cases, and whether he's convicted or not, they're very serious allegations of mishandling of classified documents, our nation's secrets. These are serious charges. And so I look at that and I stand by that I believe there's a likelihood that he'll be convicted of at least one felony offense next year. But regardless, we've got to consider the chaos that surrounds the candidacy and who do we want to lead us in 2024? Who can set the right pattern for our future in America and be strong, but at the same time set the example of our national character and integrity. And so there's a lot for the voters to think about. I supported Donald Trump in 2016. I supported him in 2020. But in 2024, we need a different leader. And we're going to pay a price for it for decades in the Republican Party if we don't get this right.
You mentioned the classified documents. Which crime stands out to you as that to you is the most disqualifying if you were to be convicted for it?
Well, I've said that what happened on January 6th is morally disqualifying, but it's another question as to whether it is criminal action or not, and that's what the jury will have to decide. But what's happening with the classified documents is it's our nation's secrets. It is the most serious offense in my judgment when you're looking at the men and women of the military that rely upon those secrets being protected. And then to use those as entertainment value with reporters or with donors, that's unacceptable when you're looking at the next commander-in-chief. Now, so I believe that that's the most serious one, but We will see. They're all serious, and there is the presumption of innocence, but that kind of chaos and distractions is very, very difficult for the voters to analyze and to work through to elect the next leader.
Well, I'll ask you this way. When you say this to people, certainly the reaction in Florida, the reaction in the first debate, you get boos. What do you think is behind the boos?
Well, there's a loyalty to the former president. Like I said, I identify with that because I've supported him. And so there's a loyalty there, but I also know that people want to win. And it's important that we have leadership, in my judgment, other than Joe Biden in the future. And so if you put those together, everyone has to seriously evaluate what's the right step for us. And so it's a challenge. I made one speech to a whole large group of Trump supporters, and afterwards somebody in a Trump hat came up to me and said, "You didn't fully persuade me, but at least I like you now." And so, there's multiple steps here that are important. And so I make my case in a congenial way that we all have to come together when it's over with, but this is a contested Republican primary where I'm running to say I am the right one to lead America. I believe that. So I make my case, and I know Donald Trump will be making his case as well as the others.
Back in August, you were among the highest profile people to actually bring up the 14th Amendment. I think you might have walked that back a little bit since then, or tell me if I'm wrong. But now we've got a trial actually underway in Colorado. How closely have you followed it, and what do you think could be a result of that trial?
Well, I haven't walked it back at all. In fact, I raised that on the first debate, the 14th Amendment, that could be a disqualifying factor. And I raised it because, again, this is another element of chaos that's going to face the voters next year, and it's going to be late in its determination. And so we've got many district court judges across the country that's looking at it. It'll ultimately go to the United States Supreme Court, and it'll be late. And so we're not going to know the outcome of that, whether he is qualified or disqualified, until conceivably next summer. And another element of uncertainty that puts the Republican Party, the voters, and our country in jeopardy.
Do you have any sympathy for the former president and the case that he makes that these are political enemies using the justice system to get back at him because they don't like what he says, because he tweets mean things, because do you have any sympathy for that argument that this is a completely new way of using the courts in the middle of campaigns that are fired up like this?
Well, he brought much of this on himself through his own conduct. Now, I disagree with some of the cases, the New York case, for example, that should have never been brought. And there is absolutely a concern. In fact, the Justice Department itself in the review, the Durham report, found that the Justice Department had been politicized. So that is very legitimate. It doesn't mean that every case and every fact that he's being held accountable for has its roots in politicization. And so they all have to stand on their own. I do believe in reform of the FBI and federal law enforcement. That's why I have a very specific plan to accomplish that. But these are issues that are really undermining our justice system and the rule of law by his conduct. Now, let me just illustrate this. This last week, we had the civil fraud case in New York, and you had Donald Trump scolding the judge. He was behaving like as I said, a petulant child in his testimony. His daughter goes in and testifies, Ivanka, and she's respectful to the court. She gives her defense. She speaks what she believes should be presented. You can do things in a defense and still be respectful for our institutions of justice. And to me, that's important. And so that's why I hold issue with how he is undermining what is so important in our country, which is the rule of law.
We talked a little bit about your schedule. What's been the most fun you've had out there in these months out in the campaign trail so far?
I've had a lot of fun. First of all, my wife Susan is with me on some key campaign events, and being able to go to New Hampshire where it's so historic. And for example, talking about fun, I spoke on the same platform in Exeter, New Hampshire that Abraham Lincoln spoke on in 1860. And somebody who loves history, that was a special moment for me. But it's also fun going to the Red Arrow Diner in Manchester, where presidents and candidates for decades and decades have campaigned. I was there in Iowa, going to the Iowa State Fair, which is such a cultural experience. These are great memories for me. They're fun. I love people. And they're all very engaged. They understand since they go first, they've got to take an extra level of responsibility in asking questions and getting to know the candidates.
New Hampshire's famous for potential comebacks, including a former Arkansas governor who did well there. You seem to be a little bit farther behind in the polls at this point than perhaps he was. But what do you need to do to create that kind of comeback and that momentum?
Well, a couple things. And one, I have to raise enough money to stay in the race and be competitive. I need to get positive ads on TV. Secondly, I've got to be able to see some movement in the polls, to sense that there is the support that I need to move up in New Hampshire and Iowa. And part of it is making sure we have the media exposure, because people don't know me as well in my record in Arkansas as perhaps a governor from a very large state that has a national profile. So we're climbing upstream, or we're swimming upstream, I should say, and those are the tests as to how we can be successful. But you've got to remember Mike Huckabee, Rick Santorum, all very far behind in Iowa, and they're late deciders, and you get momentum toward the end.
One thing I wanted to circle back to, how much disappointment did you have when the current governor endorsed President Trump this week? She worked for him. I guess it kind of makes things obvious, but how disappointed were you?
Well, I wasn't necessarily disappointed, because she called me, she explained her reasoning. Of course, I have great respect for her and the fact that she has a great deal of loyalty to the former president. So I don't think anybody saw that as a surprise and as actually expected. So I don't think that changes the dynamics here in Arkansas. And I look forward to campaigning and earning the support of Arkansans.
And in terms of generating that money, generating that momentum, what do you want to most focus on to get that ball rolling?
Well, the only way I can start, which is by the retail politics in New Hampshire and Iowa, and using that as a base of growing support. And I sense that. We just got to convert that into better name recognition, better numbers, and then the fundraising follows that at the same time.
But what do the voters want to hear when you do that retail politics? What are you hearing from them, and what do you think you could deliver for them?
Well, first of all, what they're concerned about is fentanyl that's flooding our community. They're concerned about the border. They're concerned about our economy. And so guess what? In each of those, I have a message, which is I'm going to elevate the issues of drugs to a cabinet level position. I have experience as head of the DEA in dealing with opioid abuse. When you look at border security, that was my responsibility in the Bush administration. And when you look at the economy, I balanced the budget in Arkansas for 8 years, and I did it in Congress. And so I've got a track record that addresses each of the concerns that they have. That resonates with them, and they say, this guy, not just making promises, he's actually proven he can do it.